this is Melissa Lane, and you're listening to the LifeKraft Podcast, where we will be bringing you new insights, awareness, and tools to create a fulfilling life. On this episode of the LifeKraft Podcast, we have financial planner Adele Barnard. This is the second episode of our Monday Matters series, created to help you become your most abundant self. In this episode, we look at Financial Planning 101. Adele shares the foundational things we need to have in place, like a budget and an emergency fund, and she also shares some of her favorite resources. We also get into insurance and which type would suit you and your lifestyle, and we look at the changing landscape of retirement. Are you ready to be inspired? Then tag at the LifeKraft and at Adele Barnard and share a screenshot on your stories with us of your biggest takeaway from this episode. Adele, welcome to LifeKraft. I am so excited to have you on for the second episode of this series all about money and why it matters. Today we're going to get into Financial Planning 101. And to be quite honest, I am not the type of person who enjoys planning, and I'm not really good at it either. So it's been a real struggle my entire life to know the importance of financial planning and know how to get started. I got started with it quite late. It wasn't something that was discussed in my house. So I had to teach myself how to be a little financial planner. But I would love for you to share with our audience today how we can start financial planning if you've never started before, how to get into it if you're the type of personality that I am that doesn't like planning. So are there any shortcuts? And what are the fundamentals, the really foundational things that we need to get in place when it comes to financial planning?
Melissa, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back. Financial Planning 101 is obviously something so dear and near to my heart. And don't worry, literally, I promise you, most people don't like doing their financial planning or chatting about finances or Adulting 101 in actual fact. So you're not alone. And I'm so glad we've got this platform to discuss and dive in. So for financial planning, to start off with, I always say, choose your platform and what works for your personality. Either get yourself a registered financial planner with the FSCA, go online, chat to me or whoever, but get someone that is a specialist in the field. I always say horses for courses. So if I'm sick or ill, I go to the doctor. Sometimes you can self-medicate, but in some instances you need to see the professional. So I think that is quite key. But with regards to just basic planning, if I can take you through the steps, I always say every single individual, we need a financial plan. If you earn an income and you've got expenses, it requires financial planning. So the heart of any financial plan is a budget. I always say start there, because we need to see what's the money that's coming in, what are our expenses, and where's our money going to at the end of the day. So if we've got a budget, we can take it from there, and all the financial planning side parts flow from there. Okay. Then also what's important, an emergency fund. I think my famous line for 2020 was, if 2020 taught us anything, it's the importance of having an emergency fund. So which we'll dive in a bit more. And then also the importance of insurance. I think so often I've got the conversation with people, they've got the view, no, I'm healthy, or it won't happen to me, and the likes. And I've seen a major difference pre-2020 and post-2020, how people's mindsets and the opinion and view have changed about financial planning in essence. But in short, sorry, very long answer, but in short, to start with financial planning, everyone needs one. So either read up and online and educate yourself if you want to do it. But if you're unsure, rather get someone and chat to someone to assist.
Okay, so we're going to link your details down below so people can talk to you if that is what they feel comfortable with. If they can't afford a financial advisor or they want to do a bit of self-study, what are some of the resources? I know people always say, just Google, but sometimes we don't know what to Google because we don't know anything about finances. So what can we maybe start Googling? What books can we start reading? And say what podcasts or things can we start listening to just start learning the jargon in regards to all of these words: budget, emergency fund, insurance, which we'll get into each of them right now. But where can we start?
Great stuff. So, okay, great. With me, if for everyone listening to this session, they can get you'll pop my details, they can get a complimentary session with me. But with regards to books specifically, so your best bet is to literally, even if you go to exclusive books or the finance section and look, preferably for the South African context, that is applicable to our legislation in our country. There are various people. One of my favorites is Nicolette Mashile, Financial Bunny. She wrote a book recently or last year, What's Your Move? I love that. I think because it's based in South Africa, her content is so relatable, which you can apply. Other individuals you can look at is Warren Ingram. He's also a financial planner. He wrote a book. So there are quite a few. Internationally, we always like to go with Warren Buffett's books. Then I'm reading now Think and Grow Rich. I forgot the author now.
Napoleon Hill.
Yes, Napoleon Hill. Yes, sorry. I'm like looking at it all the time and I couldn't remember. So I think that would be it. Podcast-wise, internationally, one of the most famous people is Dave Ramsay. So he's American, and also is very vocal about finances. He's got a show even, and we need a few of him in SA, I think, because in South Africa, we're not a savings nation. We're a very consumerism, very spending nation. And he's one of the strictest people I've seen. He would literally tell you cannot afford that, you cannot do that, and. So Dave Ramsay, you can find him on Instagram and Twitter as well, with regards to his shows. You can also listen to Bruce Whitfield's podcast, and he is a presenter on Cape Talk, and he writes for the Financial Mail and the likes. For maybe a bit more advanced, you can read Financial Mail, Fin24, those type of things. Or even, I think, just to get back to basics even, make sure you get the jargon first, because I think what often happens, people just dive in, start reading, and then they get so anxious or they get nervous because they're like, oh, they don't understand the terminology.
Okay, so let's start with budgeting. I know there are a couple of people who have got a budget down, and some people think they have a really, really great budget, but when you go and look at it, it's always kind of in the minuses. So it doesn't really help they have a budget if they don't follow it. And how does a really great budget look? Where do you start with that?
Okay. First of all, you need to figure out what platform works for you. So if you're old school, if you want to use a book, a pen and paper, that's fine. If you're advanced, you want to use an Excel sheet, use that. If you want to use notes on your phone, there's budgeting apps that you can download, which will also provide you links to. In today's time, there's no excuse not to have a budget. Like literally just figure out which method works for you. The reason why I say that, if you don't figure out which method works for you, you're not going to do it. So if you do technology very savvy and you've got the app, it's easy to monitor, and then you can see, oh my goodness, I'm spending so much on entertainment or so much on retail or whatever the case might be. I know it's pretty cool with my bank as well. With when I get my statements, it's got like this pie chart, and it then shows me, oh, Adele, you've been naughty. Entertainment is this percentage and the likes. So with your budget, hand in hand goes bank statements. I always advise my clients, take a 1 month, or better even take 3 months, print it out or scan through it and scrutinize it, highlight and see, oh my goodness, this is where my money goes and the likes, and then take it from there and then plot it into your budget. Something very valuable you mentioned, we see it so often, or I see it so often as well, where people have budgets and then, the income is here and the expenses are there, because it's expensive living in SA. I mean, we're killed with taxes, the consumer's under pressure, fuel is on the increase, inflation is increasing, and the likes. And that is especially even more so a reason to budget and to plan, because it's not going to get better if you don't look at your finances physically.
Absolutely. Then if we have got the budget down and we are learning how to follow our budget, or we're actually following it to the T, an emergency fund is always something that people don't know. Where do I start? Do I put in how much? I barely have enough to get by in any case. If I have covered all my debt and I'm following my budget, there is no chance for an emergency fund. Where do you put that into your whole financial planning in a month?
So true. The thing is, an emergency fund, it's just not going to happen overnight. It's something that does take time because you need to make a space. You need to allocate the line item on your budget to say, cool, I need to save for my emergency fund. Ideally, you also don't want to touch your emergency fund. It's not for overseas trips or buying luxury items or any luxuries. It is, as the word says, for an emergency. So if you need new tires on your car or something broke into the house, then you'll use your emergency fund. Ideally, what we want to do is we want to say you've done your budget, so you know what is your net amount that you need per month. So that net amount, times it by 3 or even 6 months if you want to be very comfortable, that would be the ideal amount to set aside. Life is quite uncertain. You can lose your job, you can become ill, and we'll dive into insurances a bit later, but you need to have that buffer just to fall back on to take care of yourself or your family and the likes. So with an emergency fund, and also don't just leave it in your check or your savings account because you might be tempted to dip into it if you're not financially disciplined. So get a separate type of account where you can save the money so that you don't touch it unnecessarily.
What type of account would you say is the best one? A 32-day type of account, an account where you can't access the money easily? What would you suggest?
So if you know that, like if a person knows they're not disciplined, a 32-day account will be great. But also the downside of that is it takes 32 days notice that you have to give. And in a case of an emergency, I'm sure that you'll either want to have the funds within a day or two. So ideally what I do in my personal capacity is, and there's a lot of, just remember it's not financial advice, it's just my opinion, pros and cons. So I've got a separate savings account with one of the other banks at a minimal fee. My interest is luckily always more than the costs. And I just put my emergency fund is in there. Some people differ from their opinion. They want to put it into unit trust or money market funds and the likes. You can do that, but obviously with your emergency fund, you don't want any market volatility. You don't want to be exposed in the market. You don't want to. It's a safety net. That is crucial to remember. Okay. So in short, I have a separate savings account.
Let's get into insurance. Not a lot of people talk about insurance when it comes to Financial Planning 101. We always try and be as positive as possible and think nothing bad is ever going to happen. And when the insurance and the life cover people call us, we always pretend like we don't need to take their call. We'll be fine. But what do you think is the type of insurance that we definitely need to take a look at? And at which age should we start with life insurance and all of those things? And then if we can look at retirement, how that's changing and the landscape in that.
Okay, so first of all, it will depend obviously where the individual is in the life cycle. So if they're a student or have they just started working, or are they married and are there children or financial dependents and the like? So that will all play a role. So ideally you want to sit one-on-one with your client or the potential client and chat and see, okay, like this is where the needs are. But if I can take you through it, just like the concepts and what would be applicable. So in standard, we've got life insurance. So life insurance is needed if you've got liabilities. For example, you've got a bond and in the event of death, you want to it. And you've got, there's maybe a partner, a spouse, and there's other financial dependents or children. Reason why I'm referring to financial dependence in general, in the South African landscape, we are seeing massive changes. We're seeing that in young portfolios, young professionals or young individuals, then start need to taking care of their parents maybe or grandparents. And I also see the other side of the coin where people that are moving into the retirement space need to assist their children still. So that is also very important conversations to have when you figure out the amount of life insurance. Obviously, hypothetically, if I can make an example, if let's say a typical family and there's a youngster of 2 years old or 3 years old, they'll need more life cover because if something happens to the mom or the dad today, there needs to be money to look after the children or the child. So that is where life insurance plays a very important role. And also, in the sense of to assist with an estate, for estate liquidity and the likes, we also need life insurance. But that, it gets a bit, we need to get into a bit more detail for that. Then we also have funeral insurance. So funeral insurance is typically an individual passed away and or depends now from company to company, if they've got all the documents within 48 hours and the likes, that they can pay out an amount of money, and that's just for the funeral arrangements. That's life insurance. Then there's other components to it. Then you also get, for example, disability cover, and that is also a bit more in detail. You get lump sum, and then the sister one, if I can call it that one, is income protection. So just the difference between the two. So disability lump sum cover, as the word says, it's a lump sum that will pay out in the event of permanent disability. So that is to either for unforeseen medical expenses, or if you need to make changes to your car or your home, and the likes, and that can be quite costly. Then something that I feel is very important, if you're young and you just started working, you need to have income protection. All my clients know I preach it to them. So income protection works on a different basis. It's a monthly amount, so it's not lump sum. And also it covers in the event of temporary disability. So we can have an instance where someone is in an accident and they're not permanently disabled, but they're out of action for a couple of months. And typically your income protection will then kick in at a set premium. And then it's also important to take into consideration if the individual maybe has those benefits from the employer. So I always chat to my clients and say, cool, what are the benefits that you've got from your employer? So we can look at those. If you've got them, cool. If you don't, these will come in as supplementary benefits. Income protection, very important. Yeah. And then the third component, so we've done life insurance, we've done funeral, we've done disability lump sum and income protection. And then we've got severe illness cover. Severe illness is more for your cancers and your heart attacks and the likes. And then a lot of people always tell me, yes, Adele, but I've got medical aid and I'm covered. Just now in the news, we've seen, there was an instance of someone that had medical aid and the likes, and the medical aid got depleted, the funds, unfortunately. So you've got medical aid, you've got gap cover, which is like auxiliary, for the shortfalls that you may occur. But then you've got severe illness, which is also a type of health insurance. So in many cases, there are shortfalls, and then that is where your health insurance will apply, and you can use that lump sum. Severe illness can also come in the form of a lump sum amount or a monthly amount, depends on your circumstances and how you choose to apply it to your portfolio.
That's fantastic. I understand that in a lot more detail now. And I think especially after 2020, we are so much more aware of the fact that we need some kind of backup that we plan for in our monthly budgets for instances like a global pandemic, which I hope will never happen again.
Yeah.
But let's quickly chat about retirement. I know that the landscape with that is changing, and I found it very fascinating when I spoke to you earlier. And I'd love for us to quickly talk about that, and then we'll get into what next week's topic is.
So with the retirement one, the landscape is changing drastically. Reason for that is people are living longer. So back in the day, or many, many years ago, people would retire at 55 or 60 or 65, and they will pass away at the age of 70 or early 70s and the likes. Today, it is not the case. My grandma was 89. My grandpa was 90 when he passed away. So people are living much, much longer. So if you hypothetically retire at age 60, you live to 89, that's another like 29 years. That's a very long time. So that is why we see that in the South African context, currently the stats are only 6% of individuals can retire living the same lifestyle post-retirement, as pre-retirement. Only 6%. So that's very little because people don't save enough and we start to live longer. But what is also exciting, because the conversation is changing, which I absolutely love and I'm here for this, is you can see with work from home life, you can see with millennials, if you really love what you do, the answer I get most often now is, oh no, I'm not going to retire because I can work from anywhere in the world and my business can still continue and I can still earn an income, which is a good thing. But at the same time, planning is still key because we don't know what the future holds. And, any life event that can happen. And like you said, like a pandemic, hopefully we won't have one again anytime soon. But insurance is there for the unforeseen. It is for taking a cover or your measures against risk. preventatively. So I think what we also need to bear in mind is typically if someone works for a company, the retirement age can be from 55 or 60, 63, 65, some places even 70. They've changed it down and made it a bit older. So you need to be aware of that. And actively, I see it so often, people don't look at their pension or provident or retirement annuity contributions at the employer. Review that. It takes two to tango. So you need to look at it because your employer gives you employment. It's not their responsibility technically. So you need to look at it and take charge of your retirement. The fact that people are living longer also indicates to us our workforce will become older, and so that dynamic is changing because all of a sudden you've got the older generation that needs to work with a millennial now, and or Generation Y or Z or whatever, and that also causes a bit of clashes. Yeah, so you need to upskill yourself as well if you want to remain relevant in the workforce as well, planning and entering into your retirement. So it's a crucial conversation to have. But yeah, people are living longer, and it's the new long life.
I love that we're starting to talk about it, because that's what I'm aiming for in health and wellness and how I build my life. But I never thought of retirement also being moved on later, or you saving for retirement and not having as much as the generations before you just because you're living longer. So it's a fascinating conversation, and I hope we can dive into it a bit more in the future when we get a bit more clarity in regards to it. So next week we are going to start looking at budgeting hacks, and I'm very excited because now we have been inspired to get our budgets in order. We have been inspired to get our emergency funds in order, as well as looking at insurance and retirement. So if you guys have any other questions for Adele, please pop them in the comments below or leave a review and really start applying what you have learned today. This is not something that you do just for more knowledge. Action is what's going to change your financial future. And reach out to her, ask her questions, or pop a comment on @LifeKraft as well. We'll put all the details down below. And we can't wait for week 3, where we're going to start learning some budgeting hacks. Thank you so much, Adele.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to share your takeaway or something you heard that motivated or inspired you, we would love it if you would subscribe to our channel, leave a review, and tag @LifeKraft on Instagram. Also, feel free to let us know who you'd like to see appear on this show in future. We enjoy bringing you interviews from experts and everyday people so that they can talk about their experiences and share information, tips, and what has worked for them on their journey towards a better life. However, remember that the opinions or advice of our guests and myself, the host, should not be taken as personal, actionable advice and is given as general information and education only. Please always remember to consult a qualified professional before implementing any medical, financial, legal, or other advice that you believe might work for you. LifeKraft is not responsible nor liable for your decision when implementing anything you hear on the podcast. Please listen and act responsibly. The opinions of our guests do not represent the opinions or views of LifeKraft or Melissa Lane personally, and are meant as information and general education only. Education only. Education